There's too much that's going on, I don't know what to do. Paralyzed by options in this world, can't pick and choose. Yeah, everybody's life is on display, including you. Yeah, I feel every day is just the same, stuck in a loop. I need some variety, I'm sick of this anxiety. I'm sick of this society, they make us feel a rivalry. Compare ourselves to others, but we all got different mothers. We were raised in different structures, so we're different, it's no wonder, yeah. I just want a great life, something where I feel like I just didn't waste time. Something I look back and say that was a great time. Cause man, I just hate when the years pass by the wayside. I'm so lost inside, and I need a little time to find who I am in this life. I will find a way to feel alive. I'm so lost inside. You better watch out now, I figured something out, what this whole life's about, yeah. It's not the goal, it's the journey, wasted emotion is worry. I'll stop being in a hurry, and I'll just enjoy what I'm doing. Keep pushing forward and moving, appreciate the improvement, yeah. I was so stuck on a goal, was losing sight of my soul. Need to enjoy getting old and be so present. I don't know if there's a heaven, but I know I wanna get in. And sometimes I feel a presence, energy in a direction, so I follow intuition. It took me to a musician, now I'm on a different mission, to help others with afflictions. Now I'm not lost inside, I finally have seemed to find who I am in this life, and I found a way to feel alive. I'm not
like a shadow, there's a dark side to me. I work privately to go build and create my own dynasty. A new rivalry, it emerges ever so silently. But I got fight in me, so I'll squash anything that's trying me. I'm like, me versus you, I hope that you know what you're getting into. I got nothing to lose, so you better watch out, can't predict my moves. I'll make you irrelevant, I don't stop till I'm at the top settling. I live here like a local resident, and you know I ain't selling it.
I won't stop, I'm here to get what I want. I'm not lost, I'm here to make it to the top. I'll take a shot, I'll overpower any boss. Cause I am not someone that you were born to cross. I won't stop, I'm here to get what I want. I'm not lost, I'm here to make it to the top. I'll take a shot, I'll overpower any boss. Cause I am not someone that you would want to cross. I won't stop, I'm here to get what I want. I'm not lost, I'm here to make it to the top. I'll take a shot, I'll overpower any boss. Cause I am not someone that you would want to cross.
Round two, I gotta screw loose. I'll work all night if it's what I gotta do. Who needs sleep when the caffeine's brewed? I don't fatigue.
We're live and welcome everyone to this episode of Down the Rabbit Hole with Ed the Techie and me, who be the uneducated host for the evening, as Ed regales us with tales of Admiral Byrd at the bottom of the world. Welcome, Ed.
Good evening, John. Good evening, everybody who's listening. Nice to be back.
It's great to hear you again. Just a quick one for the troll room. How's the audio? Ed, give them some level, please.
Hello, this is Ed the Techie coming to you live from sunny Brighton.
Let's just see. We'll give them a couple of seconds to respond. Sounds good. Yep, there
Excellent.
we go. Right. So Von started stirring it already with, I thought it was the edge of the world. No. I don't know what you mean. That's a longitude and latitude calculator behind me. Please don't assume
we're gonna.
anything.
Well, that's flat Earth, and tonight we're going to touch on hollow
Earth. Yeah, cool.
which is another one of those theories.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Right. Okay, Ed, take it away. Where are we starting?
So, without further ado, let's take a trip to the icy depths of Antarctica to unravel the enigmatic mystery surrounding Admiral Richard Byrd and his legendary naval operation Highjump. For years, experts have been trying to piece together the true objectives of this intriguing mission, navigating through a blizzard of official statements, conspiracy theories, and mere speculation. The plan is to try and uncover the truth, or get a little bit closer to it than we are at the moment. And we're going to delve fairly deeply into the rumors and official explanations that have left so many people wondering what actually happened during the Antarctic exploration. Let's start at the beginning. That's Admiral Richard Byrd, born 1888, which is kind of a cool year to be born, just because of all the A's, and died in 1957. He's a famed polar explorer and naval officer, and led what was officially known as the United States Antarctic Development Expedition. You now know why they called it Operation Highjump.
Yeah.
Between 1946 and 1947. The mission was said to be centered around researching seismic activity, establishing weather stations, and other scientific endeavors. The sheer scale of the operation, with 13 ships and over 4,000 Navy personnel, and a vast assortment of aircraft, fixed-wing helicopters, the works. It's led many to suspect that there was something more going on, and the rumors have just gone completely crazy. I mean, the official Navy explanation is usual US military kind of nothing to see here. We were going down there to establish a presence and see if there are any natural resources and
it wasn't.
See if
it wasn't Byrd's first rodeo, though, was it? He'd been on expeditions for both himself and the Navy before, hadn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He was the first. He was the first person to circle the North Pole in a plane.
Cool.
Which was 1926. So circling the North Pole in a plane in 1926 was not an easy thing to do.
That's.
He was also that's flight over the North Pole. That's one.
He's got some cojones then.
Yeah, no, he was a proper. Serious. I mean, he was basically a very serious guy and an explorer. I mean, he's also credited with the first polar flight on Antarctica as well, where he flew from Little America, which is the American base on Antarctica or in Antarctica, to the South Pole and back. I don't know how that kind of tracks with the whole ice wall and the flat Earth thing, but that's not what this particular podcast is about. And let me just go back to where we were. So, for those unfamiliar with the story of Admiral Richard Byrd, as John and I have been saying, he's a highly decorated and renowned American naval officer, aviator, and polar explorer. However, it's not his impressive accomplishments that have endeared him to rabbit hole explorers around the world. It's a series of events and claims that occurred during his participation in Operation Highjump that have yeah, that's essentially where the legend was born. Was Operation Highjump. Now, Operation Highjump is widely viewed as one of the many top secret missives that took place in the aftermath of World War II, and it did happen just at the end of the war. It's one of the interesting things about it, because the Americans essentially were shipping loads of troops home, and Europe was completely destroyed. And there was a lot for the Americans to do, but they decided to send a whole bunch of ships to Antarctica, which.
So towards the end of the war, there was all these rumors as well about, Nazis escaping to Argentina and down in that area, and U-boats going to Antarctica and stuff like that. Do you think there was anything around that with regard to this big military expedition to the South Pole?
Well, yeah. I mean, you kind of put two and two together and make four. It's kind of, I mean, Antarctica, particularly at that time. I mean, this is before a lot of the modern fabrics and materials and plastics and stuff that makes polar exploration in 2023 slightly easier than it would have been in 1947. And just the sheer number of ships and aircraft and men that they sent there, it doesn't track. There's something about it which doesn't make sense. And I mean, the Nazis were on Antarctica. I mean, there's even there you go, Nazis in Antarctica.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And so they had some bases, and they were trying to tap the continent for resources and things like that.
Yeah.
That was the official explanation. The rumors about what the Nazis were doing in Antarctica primarily focus around a secret underground base called Base 211, which was theoretically a sanctuary for German elite, and they stored loads of advanced technology, some of the UFO stuff that we talked about in a previous rabbit hole, and scientists and things like that. So yeah, the flying disc, the Die Glocke, and what was the other one called? Begins with an H. Hannibal, that's the one. And also theoretically as an escape for some of the more high-ranking Nazis, such as Hitler, who has always his death has always been the subject of conspiracy theories, and it's probably a rabbit hole in itself.
Yeah.
And yeah, theoretically the Nazis had created massive underground bunkers and bases, and they had submarines going out there and everything else. And in theory, Highjump was sent there because the Americans had found out about the Antarctic base and were determined to root out the Nazis or steal the tech or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, so that's one of the main sort of conspiracy theories around Highjump, is that it was about killing Nazis effectively. And Admiral Byrd, he wasn't the commander of the operation. I think he was basically second in command, but he was on one. He had command of the aircraft carrier. Well, what was an aircraft carrier back then? And the actual mission commander was Rear Admiral Richard H. Cruzen. So Byrd was, he was kind of subservient to this other admiral. And sorry, I've just lost my place. Yeah, so adding fuel to the fire, the numerous tales of otherworldly encounters that unfolded during the operation. Reports of UFO sightings, mysterious flying machines in the Antarctic skies filled conspiracy forums for years. And there's a lot of stuff about that if you go looking for it. And these strange craft were said to have capabilities far beyond anything that was available in 1947.
Yeah.
There's also rumors of Foo Fighters, which were what the Allied airmen termed the UFOs. And I mean, we covered people should go back to the UFO rabbit hole and give that a watch if they haven't already.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at Foo Fighters, didn't we? And we surmised that there's a possibility it could have been ball lightning, but it's a bit strange for it to have trailed aircraft for so many miles and things like that. So that maybe takes away from the fact that there was or wasn't ball lightning. You know, it's just another unknown that we couldn't draw a real conclusion on.
Absolutely, but that's, I mean, these rabbit holes are more about the exploration and the journey rather than necessarily finding any truth. It's kind of asking some of the interesting questions, uncovering some of the things that people have been saying about it, looking at official explanations and rumors, and just giving people a bit of a starting point if they want to do their own research.
Yeah.
Now, by far the most intriguing aspect of Operation Highjump and Admiral Byrd's involvement lies at the center of the Hollow Earth. And after this flight, the theories kind of, there was a resurgence in ideas about Hollow Earth, largely because of the contents of theoretically Admiral Byrd's lost diary, which we'll come to in a minute. But Antarctica has long been the subject of rumors and speculation regarding an entrance to the hidden world. I mean, there's people think that the North Pole has a hidden entrance as well. It's peaceful civilization.
We're back. Sorry, we had a small glitch there. My fault. But we're back. We're back and we're on the same stream. So my apologies, people. That was my fault. Something was running in the background that had caused us to drop some frames, so I cancelled it and it made the stream glitch. So if we could go back about a minute, Ed, and start that bit again.
Okay. Did we cover the Hollow Earth?
We started to cover the Hollow Earth. So
all of the Hollow Earth stuff comes from this supposed secret diary of Admiral Byrd. And it came out in 1971, theoretically found by his son after his death, and published. And that started masses of additional conspiracy theories and Hollow Earth theories and things like that. Admiral Byrd himself never said anything. This is part of the difficulty with this whole story, is that the man himself was he had a highly commended military officer, highly decorated, and he just kept his mouth shut. And whether he saw anything or didn't see anything.
Yeah, but isn't that a bit strange? Because he was quite a personality before all this. You know, he was well known to the public and such like. And then
absolutely.
And then after it, he's basically said nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he didn't even really talk about the stuff that officially happened in Antarctica. He was basically just silent about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Until this diary came out. And the problem with being silent like that is nature abhors a vacuum, and the internet abhors a vacuum even more than nature does. Yeah. And so you've left wide open spaces for some crazy speculation. And I mean, whether the book was released in an attempt to make money, whether it was genuinely his diary that was found, nobody knows. I mean, that's not a question that one can answer. But the diary, in theory, extracts detail of his supposed journey into the inner earth and encounters with an advanced peaceful civilization that warned humanity of the potential for global destruction if we do not change our destructive ways. Now, these dramatic claims have raised questions for years, but one might wonder why mainstream media or the scientific community didn't even entertain such theories. It's just not. It's, as we know with those guys, they're not really interested in answering interesting questions a lot of the time. Now, could that be because there's something to these outlandish ideas that those in power would prefer to keep hidden? Or do they simply view the ideas as too ludicrous and unsupported by evidence to warrant investigation? So that's both of those could be true. Now, the most interesting part of Admiral Byrd's time in Antarctica during Operation Highjump was a flight that he took where he lost contact for about 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And that's an established fact. That's not a rumor.
Yeah.
Now, he had a team. They had teams of 6 R4Ds. They're basically a military version of the DC-3, which I think was one of the earliest of the McDonnell Douglas aircraft.
Yeah.
And they were fitted with cameras. Each plane had a trailing magnetometer. So it had a wire trailing from the back of the aircraft that picked up magnetic data.
What was that
and
for?
anomalies in...
Were they looking for submarines, or they're looking for magnetic anomalies in the ground, or what?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, part of Operation Highjump was about scientific research, and they didn't actually do as much of that as they'd intended.
Well, they didn't. See, the thing that gets me is they didn't stay there as long as they intended.
No, they're due to go there for about a year.
Yeah,
and they ended up pulling out after 3 months.
Yeah.
And the official explanation is that they ran out of money. That's pretty much that they'd hit their budget.
Yeah, but
yeah,
surely they spent the budget before they went. So it just sounds a bit strange. Just a matter of interest. Well, was any of the ships or was any personnel lost?
There were some accidents. There was a helicopter accident where one of the helicopters crashed when it was trying to land. They nearly lost the submarine. I did find this rather funky picture of 3 ships trying to push an iceberg, which, yeah, that's what you do if you're the US military.
Yeah.
They took a submarine with them. Now, they when they nearly lost that, it was essentially because, let me just pull the map back up again. Sorry, I just need to flick around. There we go. The Antarctic base is the American base is around here. Yeah. Little Antarctica, and then this is all the Ross around here. This is all the Ross ice shelf.
Yeah, so that's sea ice.
So they actually, and that's like really thick sea ice, and they had a hardcore icebreaker with them. Yeah, but they also had 13 ships and submarine, and it was the submarine that caused them the most problems, because submarines in Antarctica. Now, this also raises the question about the Nazis getting there, because theoretically a lot of the Nazi personnel and materials were shipped to Antarctica via submarine. Yeah. And they must have had similar problems to the Americans. Now, whether they'd been going there longer and they'd just developed techniques, whether they found a special route that was relatively deep and ice-free, or whatever happened, taking a submarine to Antarctica then and now is not the best idea I can think of. Because, I mean, as we know with icebergs, a lot of the mass of the iceberg is underwater. And if you're in a ship, you're only going down so far. And they're a danger. But if you're in a submarine, you've got no idea what's in front of you, especially not with 1940s sonar.
Yeah. And the other problem is, it's not like you can just keep going under the ice cap in the Antarctica, because there's a continent there. So there's land. Yeah. Whereas it's different in the Arctic, where you can actually, I mean, they pass submarines underneath the Arctic, quite routinely now, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But it was the largest US military task force that had been sent to the South Pole at that point. And I think it still ranks as one of the largest missions to the South Pole. Now, back to Admiral Byrd's interesting flight. Mm-hmm. They were basically mapping missions. They sent planes out to map sections of Antarctica and a lot of the mapping that's been done of Antarctica. I mean, that was when it started because of the resources they took with them. But on the last of many mapping flights, all 6 planes went out, and they were all sent on preordained paths to film and measure with magnetometers, and because they're essentially looking to see if there's anything under the ice or the sorts of things that magnetic data would give you. But Admiral Byrd's plane returned back 3 hours late, and it was stated that they lost an engine and had to limp back to base. That was the official explanation. But shortly thereafter, Operation Highjump was prematurely ended, and the expedition quickly left the area.
Right.
So that's why would you go to all of the trouble to schlep your way out there, smash through the ice of the Ross Ice Shelf,
Yeah.
carve paths for 13 ships. We're not just talking about sailing to the Bahamas and back.
Establish a military and scientific base, start mapping the area. You're prepared for a 12-month stay, and 3 months into it, you go, I sod this, I'm going back home.
Absolutely. And that's and the official explanation was that they ran out of money, but they were only 3 months into the operation. So it's one of the many things about this whole thing that doesn't track.
So the
now in the book,
3 hours late back on his plane. Where did he go
I mean,
for
the
3
DC
hours?
Yeah, and those planes, they weren't very big, and they didn't carry huge amounts of fuel. And in theory, he should have actually run out of fuel after about an hour and 3/4 to 2 hours.
So he was an hour.
So
he was flying for an hour with nothing, basically. If he'd been flying for those 3 hours, and that then begs the question: was he flying for those 3 hours?
Well, that's the question, and I mean, officially, it's all ice and snowy hellscape.
You say that, but I've seen footage of people bathing in hot springs in Antarctica, and there's been like snow-free valleys and things like that they've found because of geothermal heat that's come up from underneath. Because there's volcanic activity on Antarctica as well, so it's not
absolutely.
All,
I mean,
it's not all a hellish frozen landscape.
No, not at all. And I mean, the thing that people have to understand is that it's enormous. I mean, Antarctica is the same size as the United States and Europe, minus Russia put together.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a lot of space, and the human activity in Antarctica is severely limited.
Yeah.
Both due to the Antarctic Treaty, but also just because of the conditions. And I mean, some of the kit that they have out there now, the British Antarctic Survey research base is fantastic. I mean, it looks like something out of science fiction, and it has adjustable legs and these pods, and it's very cool. But existing in Antarctica comes with huge numbers of challenges.
But people don't do themselves any favors when they set up things like Antarctica, though, because no one can really go there.
No,
you need special permission. You get turned away.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you and I got a boat and tried to sail to Antarctica, we'd get intercepted and turned away.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there are expeditions. You can do cruises and stuff that will take you. I mean, but the closest the cruises ever get. Sorry, the picture's a bit crap. But the closest.
Yeah.
And the cruisers will kind of come in and they'll just sort of see some penguins and then they'll shoot off again. And some of them will make landfall in a very sort of limited way, like South Georgia Island or wherever.
Yeah.
But access to Antarctica is severely limited. Having said that, if you do a search for celebrities like the Pope goes to Antarctica, you'll see that some very unusual people. Yeah, some very unusual people.
Yeah, who was it? Was it Neil Armstrong that took ill or was it Buzz that took ill when they were there?
I can't remember off the
There
top
was
of my
one of
head.
them took
But-
ill when they were actually there.
Yeah, but loads of people have gone. I mean, like famous people now. Even just a few years ago, there was, I think, but allegedly. And well, I would. It's kind of it's a bit of an enigma.
Yeah.
But let's just get back to Admiral Byrd's flight for a moment, because that flight where he returned back 3 hours late was probably the event that was written about in the missing diary of Admiral Byrd. But one of the problems with this missing diary is that it talks about a flight on the North Pole, not the South Pole.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a conundrum, and kind of calls into question the veracity of this diary.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just run with the story, because it's an interesting story.
But even if the flight occurred on the North Pole, it would be the same type of aircraft, and it was still 3 hours late.
Yeah, well, one of the theories that I had is that, on the big assumption that Hollow Earth is a thing, what if he found the thing, flew through it, and came out the other side? Maybe he did both. Other pole.
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, and then went back again.
Yeah, but okay, but that's a stretch, because the diameter of the Earth has then got to be taken into account. That's going to take him 12 hours to fly across that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But these are the places that my brain goes to when I'm researching rabbit holes. This is part of the fun.
Unless it's like a kind of, you remember that the guy who was flying off of Fort Lauderdale and flew into what appeared to be some kind of vortex, and suddenly he was in, he was coming from the Bahamas, and suddenly he was an hour outside Miami, when it should have taken him 5 hours to get there or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's the Bermuda Triangle, which is which is another one to add to our list.
Yeah,
because that one's another truly fascinating one, and there's all sorts of different explanations for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so back to the flight. In the book, at about 11:30 in the morning, it says that the countryside below, this is Admiral Byrd supposedly writing in his diary.
Yep.
Countryside below is more level and normal, if I may use that word. Ahead we spot what seems to be a city. This is impossible. Aircraft seems light and oddly buoyant. The controls refuse to respond. My God. They're disc-shaped and they have a radiant quality to them. They're close enough now to see the markings on them. It's a type of swastika. This is fantastic. Where are we? What has happened? I tug at the controls again. Byrd notes that he can see swastikas on the flying discs. This is a significant point, considering that Byrd was in Antarctica looking for a hidden Nazi base. Now, just as a little point that always makes me chuckle ever since I heard it, one of the nicknames for the hidden Nazi base was Neue Schwabenland, which is basically New Schwabland, and it just makes me think of Crazy Klaus in Davos.
Yeah. What was Queen Maudland? Is that German as well?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I might.
No, you've just hit me with something.
Yeah, you might have to look that up.
Yeah, it's
not just now. At some point.
Yeah, no, I will. I don't want to start going off doing research. That's not the point of these. But I should have picked up on that one. It's difficult to pick because I was new to Operation Highjump. I'd never really researched it. So what we're talking about this evening is the product of about a month's worth of research and reading.
Yeah.
So Byrd's spotted these. This is in the book that he's seen these flying discs with swastikas on them. And they're flown by tall blonde pilots who speak to Byrd in what he describes as a Nordic or Germanic accent.
Nordic aliens. It's Nordic aliens.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is that the book said, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, they called themselves the Ariani, so Aryans. I mean, who knows?
The Ariani Grandes.
But the interesting. Oh God! Don't start. I saw a really funny meme of her where she does a transformation from when she's young, and then she ends up as one of the Uruk-hai bowmen from Lord of the Rings. It's hilarious. Anyway, so the interesting thing is that in the diary he actually reports losing control of the plane, and then his aircraft effectively not falling out of the sky, and the engine stopping, and the plane being brought down really gently.
Right.
And he gets out and he meets the pilots of this plane, and he's taken for an audience underground with the master, where he's told that the inner world civilization has been closely watching the surface world with growing interest, especially after the atomic bomb explosions in Japan. Finally, at the end, as Bird and his radio men are allowed to leave, his hosts bid them auf Wiedersehen. Hardly a farewell one would expect from a highly advanced underground civilization who has kept their distance from the primitive surface world.
Yeah.
As for the rest of the story, the lush green valleys, the mammoths, these could all be because he saw lush green valleys as he was flying through. This is where he was flying over ice, and then suddenly he's over this lush valley and he can see mammoths and various other animals.
Live animals, is he claiming? Yeah.
Yeah, no, he reports seeing live mammoth-looking creatures, and he actually descends. He descends in altitude, and this is before he's picked up by his visitors, or the UFOs with swastikas on them. But whatever happened, he did have some sort of earth-shaking experience, and Highjump finished. They just left. Yeah, I mean, there are other rumors.
So when he got back, they basically packed up and shipped off home. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, there's all sorts of rumors floating around about battles with Nazis. I mean, there are some stories that the Highjump task force actually had a shooting fight with some Nazi UFOs. And essentially ended up having their asses handed to them and making a swift retreat. And fascinatingly, a few months later, starting in June of 1947, the US, that was when all the UFO sightings started. That was when Roswell happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that was when we had the crash. Near Roswell in New Mexico.
Well, there's a couple of crashes, wasn't there? There was more than one.
Yeah, and there was also sightings that didn't involve crashes from pilots who were very good observers, and I mean, we covered a lot of that in the last or the previous rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we haven't done the bell yet, have we? No.
We covered it a little bit in
the UFO.
Yeah, we did talk about it in the. The UFO episode, and it's rumored that was one of the things that the Nazis took to Antarctica. Now, there's all sorts of theories because I mean, as we covered before, there was a crash of a UFO in the Black Forest in Germany in the late 1930s. Now, did the Nazis have some sort of special technology? They were certainly working on stuff like that. Yeah, well, did it get shipped?
I mean, the whole Bell thing is a bit strange because I think basically they were trying to say that they were using a special type of mercury or something, and they were spinning it at weird speeds. And there is scientific experiments that have shown that there is a marked drop in the act of gravity when you do things with mercury and spinning it. It's all a bit strange. In fact, that Canadian guy, we'll need to do him as well at one point. You know, the guy that does the stuff with the frequency and vibration, the levitation and all that. So there's probably something that we could go down in that route. But again, that's for another show, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's, I mean, some of the theories behind some of this strange tech and over unity energy and scalar energy and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely fascinating.
And then when did Berlitz start writing his books about the Hollow Earth? That was what, the 50s and things, was it?
Yeah, but I mean the Hollow Earth theories have been around since the late 1800s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
So I take it. I take it the Hollow Earth theory was around before Jules Verne wrote, Journey to the Center of the Earth, or did he kick off these Hollow Earth theories?
No, it was around before that.
Right. Okay.
I mean, at its core, the hollow Earth theory posits that the Earth is not a solid sphere, but rather features vast habitable space within its interior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This concept has appeared throughout history in various myths and legends in different cultures. I mean, the Tibetans talk about Shambhala, which is supposedly far north, and this land of endless sunshine and prosperity. One of the things that I was interested coming into this, because hollow Earth, on first glance, when you're used to conventional theories about everything, seems kind of as outlandish as flat Earth. I mean, you would think that if there were two bloody great big holes at the North and South Pole, that they would have been on a NASA picture or whatever.
Yeah. There's not a lot of satellites do a polar orbit.
No. And I mean, obviously, geologists will completely poo-poo the idea that the Earth is hollow.
Yeah, right, okay.
But I went on a little... No, go on.
But then they find new things out all the time. Like, I mean, basically, they say there's an ocean under the Earth. You know, there's as much water under the Earth as there is in the oceans above it. Because they've found
if not more.
These massive trapped bodies of water. And the thing is, how does that work? Because the pressure and temperature's meant to get hotter and hotter, so surely it should be, you know, you would think it would be steam or a gas or whatever. Or maybe the pressure keeps it liquid. But then, and then the other thing, I mean, the maximum depth we've ever gone is about 8 kilometres, isn't it? That borehole in Russia. I think that's the maximum depth that we've ever drilled to. And that's not that far. Was it 8 kilometers?
No, I mean, I think
20. It's not that far anyway, you know.
Yeah, I think the actual crust is supposed to be something like 600 kilometers thick.
Yeah.
But don't quote me on that, because I've just got that number in my brain, so my brain is frequently wrong. But I sort of went on a little bit of a research mission to see if there was a plausible scientific explanation behind how the planet might form in an unusual method like that. Okay. So the first one is centrifugal forces, which some suggest that during the Earth formation, the spinning molten mass created a centrifugal force that pushed the heavier metals outwards to form the Earth's crust, while leaving behind a massive cavity within. The heat generated by the continuous spinning and friction produced the gravity experienced by those inhabiting the surface. That's the first one. Right. Second one is gravitational collapse, which is that during its formation, the planet experienced immense pressure and heat in its core, causing gravitational collapse. As a result, the outer shell remained intact, but the interior contains a vast cavernous space for potential habitation. Right. And that would also explain, because all of the hollow Earth theories describe a place where you never have any darkness. So there is no darkness at all. And theoretically, that extends to a spiritual level, because some of the theories posit that the hollow Earth actually exists on fourth and fifth dimension of reality as well. So there's that too. We're not necessarily talking about our dimension of reality.
Yeah.
So the third way that it could happen is that it could be the result of celestial collision, where early in the solar system's history, it is theorized that the Earth might have suffered a glancing blow from another celestial body. The impact of this could have ejected a significant portion of its interior mass into space, or induced forces that hollowed the Earth, leaving a habitable area within its shell.
Okay.
So the key features: proponents argue that there are entrances to the inner world, both at the North and South poles. Let me just pull up a picture of that. Here we go. Obviously, this is an artist's impression.
That looks a bit obvious, though, doesn't it?
Well, it does a bit. Now, the theory, because I thought this is ridiculous, because, I mean, surely we've had ships and explorers. I mean, Admiral Byrd claims to have flown from Little America to the South Pole.
Yeah.
And doesn't say anything about a giant sodding hole on the way. But the theory behind the sort of quasi-science, pseudo-science behind this idea of big holes in the Earth are that there's, if it's a big one like the one that's on screen, that there could be gravitational forces which, if you try to go to it, will take you round it instead, and that the magnetic anomalies kind of mess with your compass to make you think you're going in the same direction, or the holes are significantly smaller. And there are actually people. I mean, there's an expedition that was planned. I can't remember the guy's name. I'd have to look it up. But there was an expedition planned in the 80s or the 90s. And then the guy who was planning it mysteriously died, and the project was taken up by someone else, and they tried to raise funding. And but this goes right. I mean, these expeditions to try and find these polar openings go right the way back to the turn of the last century, because there's people talking about taking airships on great expeditions to the North Pole to try and find the hole. There's people that have been lost on expeditions that have said to have gone into the hole and they've decided it was so nice they never wanted to come back. There's legends among the Inuit of a land far north where the sun never sets and it's all nice and warm and there's plenty of fish.
Okay. Right.
So this is not, there's myths and legends surrounding this that go back to the year dot, pretty much. So theoretically, the entrances at both North and South Pole, and within the Earth is believed to be an inner sun or a luminous core that provides light, warmth, and energy for life, similar to our sun's role on Earth's surface. This inner ecosystem could support diverse flora and fauna, as well as potentially undiscovered advanced civilizations. Additionally, advocates of the hollow Earth theory argue that a range of unusual phenomena, such as the Earth's magnetic field and the movement of the poles, could be explained by the presence of a large rotating central core inside the planet. They claim that our current understanding of seismology may not adequately account for this possibility. So that's the hollow Earth. Now, one of the other theories is that it's actually inside out, and that we're the ones that are in the hollow Earth.
And we're peeking
out. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the slide that's currently on screen, the idea is
like
that
a Malteser or something, doesn't it? A Revel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Crunchy on the outside, nuclear hot on the inside.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, we've got the Nazis. Let's see, we've done Nazis, we've done Hollow Earth, we've done the UFOs. I did find it very fascinating that a few months after Highjump finished so abruptly, that we had the crash in Roswell. Now, one of the slightly more outlandish theories that crossed my mind was that perhaps the Americans recovered something in Antarctica, or the Nazis switched side and the Americans said, look, we'll just paperclip you guys to Nevada, and you can just keep doing what you're doing, and you don't have to be all cold and miserable down here on the bottom of the planet.
Yeah.
And then essentially shipped these Hanabus or whatever the hell they were to New Mexico.
Yeah.
And we're mucking around with them, and ended up crashing it, and someone blamed aliens before they could jump on the story. Again, it's all speculation, and there's no evidence for it, but it's one of those fun mental kind of exercises. And I don't know how I had to show this. This is one of my fun slides with little Schwabby poking his head out from the bottom. This is a map of the section of Antarctica that was supposedly Neuschwabenland. And for any German speakers out there, I've probably totally mangled it. Now, I don't know how any of this tracks with flat Earth. I'm sure if there are any flat earthers out there listening, that they will let us know in the comments or whatever.
Well, isn't some of the flat Earth lore would be that once you're past the ice wall, it just keeps going. There's different lands and different realms.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of at odds with people. I don't know how flat earthers would explain Admiral Byrd's flight to the South Pole, because theoretically he did that. I mean, it's not the sort of thing one would think that Admiral Byrd would lie about.
Yeah, but what's he using for navigation? Because you can't use a compass. So what's he using? Gyroscopes?
Yeah, I think that was how they navigated with gyroscopes.
Yeah. So I mean, the question is, you could be flying in a circle and think you're going straight.
Yeah. I mean, theoretically.
It's just, I mean, we're just spitballing here. We've no idea what's going
absolutely,
on
but
in
that's
these people's heads.
for sure. Yeah, and I mean, but at the same time, we've also got the expeditions to the South Pole, where people lost their lives. I mean, you had the race between the British and who's it, the Norwegians or the is it?
What's his name?
Scott and
Amundsen. Yeah,
Amundsen,
and
that's
Amundsen won because he wasn't British and they ate the dogs.
And he took
He took the dogs with the intention of eating them because he knew that he wouldn't be able to carry enough food. And Scott did exactly the opposite. He took the dogs with the intention of feeding them and ended up starving to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, and then there's also, I forgot to do that, but if people do a Google images search for pyramids in Antarctica,
yes, the pyramids.
There are some very interesting shapes. Let me just see if I can do this without doing everything. And there's also a channel. Oh, what's it called? There's a YouTube channel where I think it's called Mars Explorers.
Right.
And he dissects NASA's imagery with Photoshop, looking for places where someone has screwed around with the image. Because in Photoshop, there are various tools using gamma and stuff where you can actually see whether an image has been screwed around with.
Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Most of NASA's images have been screwed around with. I mean, they don't have a proper photograph of the Earth because they're all composites, because they're nothing far enough away to take a proper photograph.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I mean, that's just, we should really be plugging our other episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Yeah. Because we've covered that in quite a lot of detail.
Yeah, and that's the duplicated clouds and things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you can see it looks like natural rock formations.
Oh yeah. That's is that not where they did that Alien and Predator thing? Is that not in there?
I don't know.
You've not seen that movie?
Anything's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I love these type of movies. I like the long, slow build. Like the thing. The thing was classic, and even a bit of the old what's it? The X-Files movie, when they were that one that was set in Antarctica wasn't too bad either. I like the slow build.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of discovering these things, then it all goes it all goes pear-shaped, shall we say?
I mean, Aliens versus Predators is we live on Clown World, so I mean, at this point, John, anything is possible with these crazy people. Well, honestly, I mean,
one of the big things that came out again today is they're still maintaining that we're living in a simulation, and the chances are becoming more and more prevalent that this is a simulation and we don't really exist.
Well, there's the theories about the holographic universe.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, matter is just energy condensed down to a slower vibration.
Well,
so you think ultimately everything's energy.
If you think about it, matter is actually hard light.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it's all a question of frequency.
And I mean, as David Icke is fond of saying that our senses, our human senses, are massively limited in terms of the parts of the visible light spectrum that we can see, the parts of the audio spectrum that we can hear.
Yeah.
And that there could be an entire parallel universe happening at a slightly different frequency of light that we'd have no awareness of.
Well, and that could go towards explaining things like ghosts and, you know, that creepy feeling when you think somebody's watching you and yet you can't see anyone. Maybe someone is watching you.
Absolutely, it's entirely possible. And I mean, but Antarctica it's essentially a continent-sized rabbit hole. There is so much going on there.
Yeah.
And because it's so far away, and because so few people have been there, it's kind of a mystery. I mean, I just pulled up the Antarctic Treaty, which was December the 1st, 1959, that it was signed amongst the signatory countries, and these are all the states that have a piece of Antarctica.
Yeah.
And it's all. I mean, it's just kind of standard treaty. There's nothing rabbit holey about it. But the fact that access is so restricted, just as I said before, nature abhors a vacuum, and this is one giant vacuum that is filled with loads and loads of different stories. I mean, going back to there's a couple of books that people can, because that's basically it as far as the presentation goes.
Okay.
There's just a few more. I mean, we can keep going because we sort of wanted to keep it for about an hour, so that was kind of how I planned it.
Yeah.
And we've got a little bit of extra time for chit chat, and we could always take some listener questions.
Yeah.
And also we need to start having a think now.
Yeah,
before the end of the show about the next rabbit hole.
Sean in the chat room there comes up with a good one. Is it the Perry Rees map that came out and shows the contours of Antarctica underneath the ice that you couldn't map. You couldn't map in the 1500s, you know, unless you could see through the ice. And how would they do that? So the question is, was that map a copy of something else from an even earlier, more advanced civilization, perhaps? It's a good question.
Well, it's a very good question. I mean, that's the Piri Reis map, and it also it definitely comes from a larger section of map.
Yeah.
So one has to wonder if in one of the secret archives or a secret collector or someone has the rest of the Piri Reis map.
Yeah.
But in Graham Hancock's really good documentary on Netflix, Ancient Apocalypse, if people haven't watched that, I strongly recommend it. And then once you've done that, on YouTube, head over to Suspicious Observers and watch his disaster playlist, because there's some very interesting overlaps. But
that's
Graham Hancock says
Ben
Davidson.
Ben Davidson, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's I think it's Sunweather Man on Twitter. Mm-hmm. But I'm not 100% sure of that. I mean, if people follow me, I generally retweet his stuff.
He's got that app that predicts when earthquakes are going to occur based on the activity of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be pretty accurate.
Andrew
in the chat says that the scale's all to pot for the period. Yeah, well, it probably is, Andrew. But the thing is, what you have to remember is that in the medieval times, or allegedly, because we don't actually know anything. So in medieval times, what happened was people were quite happy to copy maps that were made by other people. So the question is, to copy a map that's been made by someone else, that still you still don't understand how they got the shape of Antarctica right when it's covered in ice. And I mean, and the thing is, Antarctica hasn't been ice free for what, 50,000 years? You know? So how did they do it? That's the question.
It's absolutely fascinating. absolutely fascinating. The other interesting thing,
What would
which is on
just,
Ancient Apocalypse,
right? Yeah.
is down here. That theoretically, this is a massive island off the coast of Caribbean, where the Bahamas is now, and that pre the last ice age, yeah, when sea levels were so much lower, that this was an actual big island. So how is any of this possible when, as you said, it shouldn't be possible?
Yeah, it shouldn't be. Yeah,
it's fascinating.
There are cities off the coast of India that are under 300 feet of water.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's not an allegation. That's a fact. They are there. You know.
Yeah, there's interesting structures off the coast of Japan, and
those
archaeologists say that
those are like what do you call it? Mega
step pyramids.
Yeah, but they're huge. They're absolutely ginormous. But the cities off the coast of off the coast of India are, you know, regular size cities. The other I think Shalini is quite insistent that I let you know that she's suggesting the Bermuda Triangle. So we'll put that in the thing. The other thing I wanted to mention before I forget is, what about that strange island that was supposed to exist just off the coast of Ireland? Do you remember? Do you know anything about that one?
I don't. Let's have a quick.
Yeah. Well, there used to be this island apparently that existed off the coast of Ireland, and yet nobody can now find it because it appeared on maps and everything.
Well, it
wasn't Atlantis. So, but it could be the story.
There we go.
Of Atlantis. Yeah. Oh, good God. Well, there you go.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was something there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's fascinating when you think about what the planet looked like before the end of the last ice age, when the sea levels were so much lower.
Yeah.
Because we have an entire there's Doggerland.
Yeah.
Not to be confused. Not to be confused with the slightly disgusting people who do things in cars in forests. But when you look at a map of the seabed, once there was a huge amount of land in between the UK and Norway, and you could walk from London to Paris without getting your feet wet.
Yeah, because the North Sea's pretty shallow.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating. But as far as the next rabbit hole goes, we should do another poll. So we need another suggestion.
Yeah, we'll do a poll. So Bermuda Triangle. What were the other things I was coming up with earlier?
Oh, I've got memory like a goldfish. Let me look back through my slides.
I really need to start writing these things down. Anybody else get anything in the chat room that thinks the Black Knight satellite? That's I don't know if we could do a full episode on the Black Knight, because there's not a lot known about it, is there?
Well, we could. How about Black Knight satellite and Hollow Moon? Because we've done Hollow. Yeah, because there's the whole Hollow Moon theory. Well, yeah, that's the. I mean, there's that Moonfall, Roland Emmerich film that came out not that long ago.
Why don't we just say space stuff? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've
seen Moonfall. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's a terrible film, but
it's so terrible that you've got to watch it. It's like a car crash. You can't look away.
Yeah, and the thing is that some of the weirdness about the moon, in terms of its size and its position between the Earth and the Sun, in such a way that that we get eclipses, and there's all sorts of mathematical stuff.
It's got to be a construct.
Yeah, and it's way bigger than relative to Earth than any of the other satellites of any of the other planets.
A third choice, anyone? So what have we got?
Could have something history.
The chronovisor. Oh, that's the Vatican thing. You know about that, don't you?
That one I've never heard about.
You've never heard about the chronovisor? So apparently the Vatican can go back and watch historical events happening.
Oh, well, we could do a rabbit, because
You
again,
could
that's
actually just
probably
go,
not.
You could probably go whole Vatican stuff there, because there'd be
Yeah, I
loads.
mean, we could do one on the Vatican secret archives and some speculation about that.
Right, so let's.
So there's
enough.
third
That's
choice.
enough for the poll. Yep. So we've got Bermuda Triangle, space stuff, or Vatican. Vatican. Right, here we go, community. I'm asking.
Just make sure you spell it right on the poll.
Yeah, Vatican. I think that's right, is it? Probably not. It doesn't matter.
VATICAN.
Put a C in there somewhere. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean. Yeah, I didn't know they could see future possible outcomes, Sean. I'm not sure about that one, but the chronovisor is cool.
But there's all sorts of stuff, even just the more conventional stuff in the Vatican archive, like hidden works of art from the Library of Alexandria and
here's a
texts from.
Here's a question that I had someone say today, right? And this will probably be our closing thought. How do we know? How do we know that the Library of Alexandria burned down, right? And how do we know that the Colossus of Rhodes fell down, right? When these things happened in their time, how do we know who recorded that when everything was destroyed?
That's a very good question.
Just a thought.
Well, we like thoughts. I mean, that's the whole point of the rabbit holes, is to get people thinking about stuff, to explore subjects that other people haven't really touched on very much, or are so lengthy. I mean, I try and condense things down to an hour, because I mean, the number of books, I mean, sometimes it's just rabbit holes. I'll read 2 or 3 books and watch 30, 40 videos. And spend hours scrolling through Google Images trying to find interesting pictures for the slides.
The problem,
and it's not. I mean, but I love it. I mean, I love doing it. It's a huge amount of fun. But the idea is to try and give people an overview, because it's not meant to be exhaustive, and to spark off some interest in further research.
Yeah. See, the problem,
also to say, sorry, John, to interrupt, but to say that if anybody researches any of the rabbit holes themselves, and you guys come out with stuff that we haven't mentioned in the show, or that you find really interesting, then hit me up on Twitter and let me know about it, because I'm really interested.
Comment on the comment on YouTube and all that as well, because that helps with our algorithm. So remember, like, share, and comment, because interaction really helps. So comment on all our shows, whether good or bad. We always read all the comments, and we usually answer them as well. The other thing that I was going to say was, what were we talking about before I started talking about commenting? The problem with researching rabbit holes is you go down loads of different rabbit holes.
It's a warren. It's not all the rabbit holes connect together.
It's actually more like an anthill, isn't it? Underground.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it never stops as well, because for every rabbit hole you think you've explored, you will find another passage to another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But then over time, you also realize that it's the connections between the rabbit holes that can be where you can find the truth. Because if you've got a lot of different things connecting together in a way that's consistent and makes sense, then you can start to get an overall picture.
Yeah. Right, so at the moment, the poll is running with the Vatican is well ahead at 50%. Space stuff is at 21%, and Bermuda Triangle is in the middle at 29%. So if anyone wants to vote, you have 1 minute, and then we will end the poll. So you have 1 minute. Get voting. Make your choices.
That's a good way of doing it, rather than leaving it open for ages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I was just looking at some of the maps of Antarctica that were ice-free. And there are also ancient maps which show a much larger ice extent as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is
Yeah, well,
that one.
There's obviously going to be. Well, yeah, that's when the Earth's sea levels were much reduced, then that water had to be somewhere. So one's got to assume it was locked up in ice. Yeah.
Yeah, or locked up in ice on land rather than locked up in ice on the sea. Because if you melt an iceberg, it's not going to change the sea level.
Well, it's exactly if your gin and tonic, if the ice melts in it, your gin and tonic doesn't overflow, does it?
No, it just gets watery and tastes nasty.
Because the ice displaces the same amount of liquid as it contains. So there we go. I think it's going to be the Vatican people at 53%. The Vatican takes this one. Bermuda Triangle gets an honourable mention. So we'll throw the Bermuda Triangle onto the next one and see how it goes up against whatever we've come up with at that point. But it's the
cool.
Vatican.
Yeah, make sure you write that one down
for you, Ed. I shall send you a message to remind you.
Yeah, make sure you clear your diaries for that one because it's going to take about 3 hours. No, I won't. Yeah. I think an hour is a good amount of time.
Yeah. No, I think an hour is a good time, and I've enjoyed tonight's. I've enjoyed tonight's showing of Admiral Byrd.
As have I.
It's there's some things in there I didn't know, and other things I did, and that's what it's all about. Every day's a school day. So with that...
Oh, absolutely.
With that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this, a fresh episode of Down the Rabbit Hole with Ed the Techie. Ed, have you any closing remarks? Anything you want to plug?
I would just like to say thanks to everyone who listened in. Come and follow me on Twitter if you're not already. And you can buy me a coffee as well if you want to. buymeacoffee.com/edthetechie. Apart from that, thank you very much for having me. And thank you to everyone out there for listening to me.
And remember, you can always support us at any time with your super chats or your support on Ko-fi, which is on screen. And we truly appreciate it. There's a new thing coming tomorrow night. So join us for Friday Nights All In because there's something fresh coming and you'll like it. And remember, it's been great for you.
It's been fantastic.
You can see the riding on the pavement. Young kids, they're growing up in basements. Online, a whole new generation. I'ma make mine, so you better go take it. Always, they need a new replacement. Decentralized, can't contain it. We're changing lives, yeah, upgrading. Call it suicide of the older generation. Too late to try to go contain it. A generation fueled by creation. We live lives on a small screen nation. We control the airwaves, no negotiation. I refuse to think we need saving. Something good will come from creation. And when we think that the world is too anxious, we'll adapt, evolve, survive, and save it. What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah.